So there are various events in history that have impacted how a woman's role has become more and more restricted as we progress in society. So while we look at modern advancement and we look at the modern civilization and the progress in cities, we look at the progress through industrialization, and we think that we're making a lot of progress and there's a lot more opportunity for us to express ourselves. But if we look at how things have progressed over time across different world cultures, we can understand how actually a woman's role has been changed and has been restricted. So now we're going to go through this journey of what a woman's role was in the Indian culture, in the Chinese culture, in the American culture, in the European culture, and how that has got impacted by events in world history. So if we look at different events in world history, or prior to that, if we look at the occupations and the activities of a Chinese woman or an Indian woman or an American woman or a European woman, most of the economy, there were not cities like how we see right now. There were no factories the way we see right now. There were not so many appliances, so many gadgets, so much mass production, so much shopping available where you could go to a place and you could buy things that you like. And so a lot of the economy that was available that at that time was more agrarian in nature. So the concept of home was not just a flat or an apartment that people live in or a big house that you would live in, but the concept of home was home, and the precincts of the home included the farm and the area of occupation. So a lot of people lived in these agrarian based economies with farms and cows, or those who did not have farmland would have different occupations like being a potter or being a weaver or being, making these different products like that. So the entire family, so there was no separation between the home and the workplace. So the entire economy was geared to this family being a production unit. And so we had these different farms, and then the women and the men would work in different farms. They would have many children, and the entire family would be engaged in working in farms, while the harder work that required more physical strength in the farms would be taken care of by the men. But the women would also be taking care of the grains. They would also be doing a lot of de-weeding of the farms and using those smaller tools that would help in working on the farm and clearing the farmland for the men and for growing. And also a lot of produce that came from the farm or from the cows that they had, the dairy. The women were involved in taking care of that, and that's across all civilizations. We're not just restricting ourselves to the Indian civilization here. So there were these milkmaids who would take care of the milk, who would work into churning it into butter, would convert it into yogurt, would convert it into different milk and milk products that they would share and barter with the different village women and with the different people in the society. And they also did a lot of handicraft and cottage industry type of work. So making of incense sticks, or making of different cloths, or making of different pottery vessels, painting, making of different furniture items that required a lot of handymanship and worksmanship. So part of it would be done by men and part of it would be done by women. So it was more like a very stress-free kind of a thing, because your home and your occupation was in the same region. And if you look at the Chinese culture and you look at the whole thing around silk that they have, so most of the managing of the silkworms, and then the getting out of the silk, and then the weaving, and then first even spinning the silk, and then the weaving of the cloth, everything was taken care of by women. And also a lot of merchant, there were women merchants of silk also along the Silk Route. And if you look at Islamic women and even pre-Islamic women, in fact, Muhammad's own wife, she herself was a merchant, and she had this whole trading route that went around all over this Middle East region, and where she was one of the most popular and very well-known and very successful merchants. And in fact, she had to hire Prophet Muhammad when he was not Prophet Muhammad. She had hired him when he was a young boy of 25 years, and she had hired him to close one of the deals and one of the agreements that she had in Syria, and she gave him a commission. So she was engaged in trading. So, you know, not just women were not just engaged in the home and the precincts of the home, but there were women engaged in trading as well. And if you look closer home, and if you look at, you know, our great Indian tradition, and you look at our scriptures, and you know, so the women's role was not just restricted to being in a flat and taking care of the house and going and working a job. There were different women in different categories and different types of occupations of society, depending upon their nature and depending upon the, you know, how their families were situated. So if you look at history and you look at Mahabharata, so if you look at Draupadi, so Draupadi was the wife of the Pandavas, and she was a big queen. So while her husbands were busy in battle, you know, and getting all, you know, winning different regions, getting different, getting the treasury of different areas, getting all the, you know, the different jewels and everything from the different battles that they went to, Draupadi was the one who took care of organizing the entire treasury, and she also took care of all the elephants and all the horses, and you know, their well-being, etc., was all under her. And also even how, when there would be a procession of Yudhishthir Maharaj as a king, then, you know, how would the entire procession go, how would the animals walk, and who would walk in the front, who would walk in the back, that was taken care of by Draupadi. She would also take care of a lot of the palace affairs, of all, you know, the different you know, the different coordination, taking care of the entire palace and things like that. So she had this entire, she was like a big CEO woman, if you look at it. But again, there was no separation between work and home. And also if you look at, you know, other, like Kaikai was a charioteer for Dasharath in one of the battles that he went to. And Draupadi herself, when she had to go through a period of being anonymous, she was a maid servant for a queen. She was a Sairindri, and she was taking care of, you know, the hair and the, you know, the, like, more like a beautician for the queen of Virat. So, and then there were many more maid servants in that palace. That means there were so many women who were employed in that palace. And also the gopis themselves were part of the Vaishya community. So their activities were around cow protection and agriculture, and they were also into churning butter, taking the milk produce, you know, walking away, taking it to the marketplaces. And also when you look at the fruit seller, the vendor who comes to baby Krishna, and she's, you know, she comes with fruit. So, you know, it was an established practice that when she came with the fruit, then there was a barter system happening, where there was an exchange of grains for the fruit that she got. So it was an established practice. It was not a surprise that, oh, how come a woman is coming around and selling fruit here? So women had a much more expanded and accepted role in society. Now, what happened over the 1800s is that we had this entire process of industrialization beginning. So a lot of these different things that were, you know, like these milk products that were coming out, or the milk that was coming out, or, you know, the different weaving things that the ladies did, or the silk looms, or even, you know, like the handicrafts of pottery, etc. A lot of these things started getting done by industries. And because they were, you know, production, because they were mass and they were, you know, creating volumes, those products were also cheaper. And also they seemed like they were higher quality, more durable, etc. And another thing that happened is that the economy changed from a barter economy to a cash economy. So first, where, you know, whatever activities that the men and the women did around the farm, and those different kinds of activities that I've described earlier, you know, those things had some value because those could be exchanged with other people to get other things of value. But what happened because of industrialization is that the economy changed more and more to cash, and then those things lost value because those were available for cheaper rates outside. So, and also what happened, you know, like, you know, you had these women who were engaged in this milk work, and now I'm talking about the Americas, and they were milkmaids who were taking care of the cows, taking care of the, you know, the feeding of the cows and everything. So then you started having these big milk companies who would say that, hey, you don't need to do anything. Our man will come, our man will, you know, milk the cows and give you money for it. So it seemed like an exciting proposition where the women didn't have to deal with the dirt, didn't have to deal with the cow dung, didn't have to deal with the milk, didn't have to do all that hard physical labor. It seemed like an exciting proposition that she was getting cash for it. But what happened over a period of time is that the role of the women got more and more restricted. And then the concept of these 9 to 5 and factory shifts started coming in because of this industrialization. So a lot of men started going outside of the precincts of home. So there started becoming a separation between the home and the workplace. So it was not that you could take care of your children and take care of your household affairs and take care of your work affairs. It was like, okay, you're at home and then you go to work and then you come back from work. So the men started doing that. And now as the economy became more and more cash oriented, the families needed more and more cash. So then women also started joining the workplace. Now for the men, it was okay to go for a 9 to 5 job. But when for the women, since the maximum of the child raising activities revolved around the women, it became very hard for the women to leave the children at home and go to work, come back and take care of the children. So that's another change that started happening. And another important aspect that came into it later on was the centralization of the education system. So while women lost this whole, all their skills and, their activities in the farm, etc., were not so useful anymore. And plus then there was a separation between work and home, and, it was getting very, very tiring and taxing for them, because it became harder for women to deal with that than for men, because the men still didn't have the burden of the child raising activities. And I shouldn't say burden, but more of the responsibility of child raising rested with the women. Now, another thing that happened because of the centralization of education is that whatever basic education a woman would give to her children at home, even that was not, that even she lost even that job. So that became something like where, children go to school, they learn something and they come back. So a woman's usefulness, her sense of usefulness at home, she started feeling less and less useful at home in terms of how she was contributing to the well-being of the entire family, and her activities started getting limited. Now, another thing that happened was the Second World War from 1939 to 1945, and industrialization had anyway taken away some of the core jobs and had created this whole separation between the workplace and the home. This whole thing of the Second World War led to creation of huge cooling machines for cooling food, so that the food could be given to the army men and preserved and things like that. Or the creation of lots and lots of textile power loom machines, and then a lot of pressing machines, ironing machines that would iron like whole big looms. Now what happened is that these huge factory machines, they started becoming miniaturized and they started coming at home. So things started becoming easy. You have a bread making machine, you have a washing machine, you have a dishwasher, you have an ironing machine, you have so many different things going on like that. So the amount of physical and intellectual challenges that a woman was experiencing in taking care of her house also started reducing. And this had another impact on their whole sense of worth. And the last thing that happened was the glamorization of the career woman. So since more and more women, the economy changed completely from barter to cash, and more women started going to the workplace, you started noticing this whole change in the whole media scene, where first, the women were shown with an apron, taking care of her house and children and the sense of a happy family. But then the whole the media changed the image of women by showing a career woman dressed in a suit, a pantsuit, going to work and doing all of these things. So a woman being at home, she started losing her sense of self-worth. One thing is because her own loss of gainful engagement at home and the activities that she could do, and also in how society started viewing those women. So all of these different changes impacted women in such different ways that women started going more and more to the workplace, because you can't expect a woman, very intelligent woman, who is capable of doing so much and contributing so much, to be sitting at home. So then more and for the need of cash. So more and more women started going to the workplace, and that changed the whole social scene. So then gradually a woman who was taking care of her family, the emotional health of the family, the physical health of the family, the spiritual health of the family, was less and less valued over a woman who was educated and who was bringing money in the house and who had a position outside in society. And because of the centralization of the education system, because of this whole industrialization, and because of the separation between home and the workplace, a lot of natural skills and a lot of jobs that were natural for a woman to do, like say there was no, being a midwife was something that was handed down over generations, how to help a woman deliver a baby. And these were skills that were handed over from generation over generation. But because of the centralization of education and because of this creation of these big industrial systems and these big corporates, everything became standardized, and you had to have an educational degree for things that were actually very traditional. So something like food management, which was something very traditional to homes all over the world, and being a midwife, etc., which was very traditional, you had to have a degree for that. So for a woman who could not go and get those degrees, and even if she had all those skills, it became a challenge for her to very positively contribute to society unless she had those certificates and degrees in place. And there's something very funny that came out, was the concept of this in the UK, was this concept of a male midwife nurse. So the midwife is someone who is a woman who takes care of helping women deliver babies. But then because of this education system and the degrees, and then this is only if you have this degree you can get this particular job, then even men started applying for those jobs. And then there was this concept of a male midwife nurse, and it was hilarious at that time for women to see something like that. This is like, how could a man help a woman deliver a baby? So a lot of their traditional jobs were also taken over by men like that. And this caused the women to be rendered, in a very, having no place to express themselves. And then more and more women started joining the workplace, because of which, the entire society has changed. Now we cannot expect a talented woman with, being raised in a certain way and going through an education system to suddenly, go back to the traditional model, because the society themselves are not encouraging women to apply those traditional models. Like, the media around you, the people around you, they're not encouraging that model, because, a lot of people say that, hey, what do you do at home anyway? There is, there are gadgets to take care of this, and there's a nanny to take care of the baby. So what do you do at home the whole day? There's not much for you to do, so you're a loser. And when more and more women tend to hear that, it becomes harder for them to continue sustaining the cultural aspects and the important aspects that a woman can bring to her home. So as a society, it's important for us to encourage this culture and to bring back this culture of womanhood, where a woman's role in society is very, very respected. Is first, even before respecting, it has to be properly understood, the contribution that she makes to the emotional, physical and spiritual well-being of a family. And if society can value that, more and more women who wish to do that service nicely will feel encouraged, and we will have a much healthier society for the future. Thank you.